Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about the other side of polyamory. Specifically, what I mean by this is somebody who has gone into open relationships, polyamory, they are around our age, and they have been as successful at this as a human can be, and they know everyone else who's really in this lifestyle. What is
Who
the
does it
life?
well? Like
And does it
as
well?
best as you possibly can. The perfect case study.
Of course, we're looking at Aella here because she wrote a blog post about this recently. And not just that, but it was so fascinating to read because when I read it clearly from her perspective, it was a bunch of wins and awesome life moments. And from my perspective, it was, I would never want that. And no. I think this is really useful because I think for a lot of people, when they start thinking about opening a relationship or like seriously sleeping around with other people, they think about it in the context of that individual decision instead of where it will lead them in life and
Oh,
whether or
what's
not
the end
that is,
game?
yeah, whether or not that's a place they want to be. And
Mm.
what I like so much about Ayla's piece here is I think that if you are the type of person who wants a polyamory in game, you will read, like, you'll hear this and you'll be like, that sounds fantastic. And if you're not, even if you're the type of guy who might be like, well, but I should sleep around on my partner more often or something like this may scare you out of that if
Hmm.
this is the end game.
Yeah, so basically for some people this actually really truly is ideal, but many people who think it's for them, it really isn't. And this is a great blog post or a Substack post to review if
Yes.
just to find out, to test the waters without necessarily destroying a monogamous relationship that could actually be the better
Well, and I
alternative
think
for you.
if you are monogamous, just from an anthropological perspective, you'll find this very fascinating. Like,
Mm.
especially if you're like us and like with a bunch of kids and your chickens and living on a farm, this is another world that she's living in that
Yeah,
is
yeah.
as different as maybe somebody living in the 1800s is from like our daily life. And I also
We'll
really
actually
found it
bring in some history here as we go more into this, because
okay.
actually,
What I also really found it interesting
yeah.
in reading this was your core reaction to it. So Simone reads this, and it's not all the debauchery that gets to her, it's the wasted time. She's like, how do they have time for this? And so I want you to comment on that as we go through this. So the article is titled Anecdotes from the Slutcloud. It works fine. A lot of people have opinions like, no man would ever seriously date a whore. Promiscuous people have relationships that fall apart. This is setting everyone up for so much drama. Slutty people are secretly suppressing their actual hatred of the lifestyle, etc. While our polyamory is full of nerdy memes about getting your polycule to play D&D, our monogamy is pretty angry at all the non-monogos. This most upvoted post includes stuff like, when you see two people in an open relationship, it's like, which one of you came up with the idea and which one of you cries to sleep every night? And I note here, what I like about her going into this is she's showing that that's not actually true. There are
Mhm.
actually people who like this polyamorous lifestyle, even if you would find it a living hell. Like, again,
Exactly.
I read through her lifestyle and I'm like, oh my God, that is a living hell. But we'll get to that in a second. But clearly she doesn't feel that way about it. And I know other people who don't.
Mhm.
And next one here. I'd get bored is something so selfish to say about your partner. People you supposedly love don't exist for your entertainment. Do I agree with that? I mean, I don't get bored with you, and you do exist for my entertainment. So, I don't mostly as a productivity enhancer and entertainment as a second. People keep saying that we were going to get bored of our conversations, so
Oh, well, that we'd run out of things to talk about with this podcast.
well, that's what I thought when I started dating you and marrying you and spending almost all my time with you and doing all our companies together. It's like eventually I must run out of conversations.
Yeah, no. Especially not
Apparently,
in this timeline.
yeah, apparently not. Yeah, this is too crazy. Next, was bored and took a small dive into poly relationship YouTube, and 95% of the videos are about training to not hear the little voice in your head telling you that something is insanely wrong. Or responses to one of my poly friends' tweets about polyamory. And so here are some responses. I'm going to invent a disease to eradicate them. They made effing around boring. Total ahumanity. I swear it's the video games, specifically RPGs, that impart upon nerds this bizarre micro-fascist structuralism to every interaction. They need to be economically and socially disenfranchised. Every GameCube will be smashed. Next, Fluffy in bio. Oh, I guess they're saying he's a furry. Quote unquote, poly people aren't people. Those are really mean.
Yeah, the hate that she screenshotted and shared in her essay is so unfounded. But I think also it's stuff that I see. She's not just selecting the most extreme, random, very unusual
No,
responses.
I
I
see it
absolutely
too.
see this all the
Well,
time.
and there's reason for it as well, especially from women, well, and from men. So, okay, I should get into like why people slut shame. Slut shaming is a very useful tool in securing partners. When women just sleep with anyone, especially attractive women just sleep around with anyone, a lot of other women lose one of the core values they feel they bring to the table that they can use to attract a partner, which is sexual access. And so, if you're in a dating market and some of the most attractive women in the dating market are just giving away sexual access for fairly little or even like monetary, which can be even worse for you because then they've discreetly priced what sexual access to somebody like them is worth,
Mhm.
you can really struggle to secure the attention of some of the men who you otherwise would have been able to secure the attention of. And for men, there's also a reason to do this because you do not, yes, you may enjoy like in the moment sexual access, but what you really want, what all men really want at the end of the day, except for this one rare category of men, is a long-term partner to have kids with. And if other women are normalizing this behavior, especially if they're not sleeping with you, which is fairly common. I mean, a lot of these people who are out there like, poly whatever, or like awful, they're the type of people who only like fat poly women would sleep with if they're men, or they're the type of people who just don't gain access to the attractive poly women.
Mhm.
And so they don't understand, like, there is a degree of benefit to gatekeeping this behavior, because if you can enforce monogamy among attractive men especially, then more women sort to you, because right now all the attractive women are just sorting to the top men, even they don't realize that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're acting out of line with like logical or even cultural evolutionary motivation, but there's a lot of cruelty to it. I can see that, but there is an intentionality behind the cruelty. I'd also note here, and perhaps even an intentionality that could lower overall social dysfunction, but I don't know if they can win this market anymore. Like, they're never gonna dissuade the polynormalized people from being poly with
No.
these sorts of tactics. Now, what
No.
might is something like our EA to sex work pipeline that goes into the effective altruist movement and the polynormalization and how this leads many women to sex work.
Yeah, I
And
think discussion of long-term ramifications and how they may or may not align with the long-term goals people have. Absolutely.
yeah,
That could be convincing.
so to continue. This all feels so bizarre to me. I live in a culture where none of the slutty people are unhappy and failing at relationships thing is true, or rather, no more so than it is for the non slutty cultures. It seems like it's hard for people to envision how life might work where there's high contingent of happy slutty people. And so,
Hmm.
what's really fascinating to me about reading Aella's posts in regard to this stuff is I feel like I know, like, I can personally pull up the various people she mentions anonymously,
Hmm.
based on the context clues she's giving around them. And
Yes, at
so,
least a bunch of them. Some of them.
right, but what's important about this to me is it means that I have the same view into this culture that she has into this culture.
You have some insight into it.
No, I
You
have
don't know
some
all the
insight, but I'd
people.
make a few notes here.
Yeah.
First, she is not wrong that there are a lot of people in this culture that have at least seemingly healthy and happy relationships that are otherwise successful and that are do partner sharing and
That are
everything
very
like that.
successful, that are sexually fulfilled and in very good, supportive, and I would say wholesome relationships that are also poly, that also involve a lot of sex.
But
And yeah, but it's just to be very clear, we know some of these people, and she is absolutely right.
but
But
few enormous caveats I'm about to add to
all
this.
right, okay.
First, every one of these relationships that I know that is stable, the guy is extremely famous and well liked and well known.
Not always, not
Um,
always, not always.
Who are you thinking of? Are you thinking the Miri guys aren't super famous? They are extremely famous.
No, I'm thinking of other ones. I mean, like and it's not, I wouldn't say necessarily famous, but well known within the community, respected in the community, attractive, wealthy, and professionally successful. So,
Okay, that's the point I'm making.
okay.
Is in every one of these instances, the guy is among most measures a 10-10.
Yeah, and if they're not super famous, then they are super attractive.
Yeah, they're not super famous, they're super attractive. The point here being is this only appears to look like it's working to her. One of my perceptions is because she is around very, very, very successful people.
Yeah.
And what she doesn't realize is the poly thing is working for these guys because they're sharing lots of women more so than women are sleeping around as much. And women are still sleeping around within these circles, but it is a lesser phenomenon.
Well, and I also want to point out that this also works because you have extremely educated, extremely self-aware, high caliber people who are wealthy living in an almost post-scarcity society. Because there is one place where I am very familiar with the dynamics that she's talking about. Can you imagine? I read a book that was about this social environment 3 times because I loved it so much.
It was what, the Uglies or something?
No, it's not sci-fi. It's real history with lots of primary sources.
Oh, this is a court, the Louis the 14th.
Yeah, Louis the 14th's court. Antonia Fraser wrote this great book called, I think it's Love and Louis the 14th, The Women in the Life of the Sun King, that talks about the court. And it is like this. It is people who are attractive, largely attractive, competent, well-educated, wealthy, lots of leisure time, and they are sleeping around like crazy.
But I would note here that as somebody who explored Silicon Valley, not entering it as a celebrity like she did, I also saw the group houses, the people being passed around, the women who were less attractive, the men who were not successful and engaged in this. Very few of them had happy relationships.
And that was also a problem in the French court in the 1700s.
Right. But I'm pointing out here that part of this looking like this is working to her is due to the filtering of the community she sees. The second is I do not feel she knows a lot of happily married people and has gotten to see them interact. As somebody who has seen both sides of this, I would say that if you had only seen people from within this San Francisco EA poly community, Austin community, you'd be like, their relationships are fine and stable and they're happy.
Yeah.
If I contrasted any of these people with the stable married couples we know who have lots of kids, their relationships are nowhere close. And these people could, like, they have the emotional intelligence, they have the bond with their partner, they have everything they need to have a relationship as high a quality as our married with lots of kids couple friends. They just sort of, I don't know how to put it. It's like their relationships are in sort of an unstable dynamic. They're held together by the partner's attraction to each other, compatibility, the social normativity of what they're doing, and often the status of the man. But this orbit is not stable in the same way that a lot of the married with lots of kids couples we know are. Another really interesting difference between the two groups is, and I suspect that this might be a core thing that causes this, is how extroverted are you? Every one of the married with a lot of kids couples I know who's in a really stable relationship are basically hikikomoris. Those are people like us who basically live on a farm.
We're shut-ins. We really stress when we're around people.
Or they live in like small group houses with like a few other people and basically never talk to anyone outside.
Really this, because Aella is also pretty introverted. At least she says she is. She spends long stretches of time alone.
She is, but she goes to big events and interacts with people. And I mean, I think she's got an introverted bone in her.
Maybe it's about tolerance, not just for
no, maybe not introversion, but tolerance at all.
I would say tolerance for stimuli, because both you and I really don't like being touched. Like, you know how my parents used to troll you by insisting that you hug them for 10 seconds? They'd like literally count, and you would just like die on the inside. And I'd like, if
I like hugging our kids though, which is I didn't expect.
Yeah, that is odd, and I feel the same way. But like, yeah, no, anyone else, like especially if they're not you or our kids, I feel deeply uncomfortable. And what's even worse is like I'm fairly good at masking, and I know I'm supposed to not be deeply uncomfortable, so I act like I love it, which means people think that I think it's okay. because they don't see me freaking out, which means that they do it. And then I really just can't be around people because like there's no way that
Oh
I'm
yeah,
going to
no,
come
I
out not
find it
tortured.
really people like this idea of like cuddle parties or something.
Oh,
I'm like, "Oh, I would not enjoy that."
torture. But yeah, I mean, for some people, yeah. So I think some people really enjoy that physical contact. And then you and I would
But I
rather,
wanted to start by validating what she's saying here, that she's
yes,
not lying, that from her perception, there are a bunch of people in stable relationships like this.
absolutely.
Okay, so to continue. So to help visualize, here's some instances from the lives of myself and people I know. Names are changed and some of the details are slightly altered to preserve anonymity.
Hmm.
We know a lot of each other's friends. I've been horny lately, says a girlfriend of mine. Oh, says a girl group chat. I'd recommend trying to bang Mike. He's really into the thing you're into. But another girl chimes in. Actually, I'm not sure. Mike is definitely into X, but I think you're actually more into Y, and it might not work out. Worth trying though! Exclamation mark. Like, imagine that. Like,
I mean, if your hobby is that, like if your hobby is sex and different like arousal pathways or kinks, that's great. I mean, if you just replace this with like knitting terms, like he's really
into
good at
no,
this.
okay,
Like I
let's
really want to do
continue.
this kind of stitch. Oh, I think so and so knows how to do this kind of stitch. Actually, he's not really good at that, but I think you actually really want to do this kind of stitch. But you can ask him anyway. Like if you just replace that with knitting or with fly fishing or with anything else.
All right, let's continue here. I'm chatting in a group of girls at a housewarming party about whether or not a mutual friend is coming. I realize with amusement that all the girls in the conversation have had sex with him. I'm hanging out with a group of friends, and one of them has to stick a pill into her vagine for medical reasons. Someone asks, quote unquote, can I watch? So she says, sure, pulls her pants down, spreads her legs, and the whole group of us watch as she shoves the pill in. Two of my friends I describe as frenemies who seem to have had a lot of sex compared to how much they find each other annoying. Okay,
I
so
mean, a
just like,
lot of this, like if you're really bored in life, this would be very entertaining.
well, no, that's another thing about this is it seems like such a distraction. First, all of this is like groups of friends. Like, dude, we don't do that. I don't ever hang out with a group of friends except when I'm like with Aella. Like Aella is like the one instance when I'm like hanging out with Aella or like some of my San Francisco friends. Do I hang out with like a group of other people who are friends? And I actually like don't get it. Like the only other time this happens to me, and you can see our episodes of Why Do Jews Have Friends, is when I'm hanging out with Orthodox Jewish friends I have or conservative Jewish friends I have. They are the only other group I know that regularly ambushes me with friends. And I'm like, why? I don't want to meet your friends. What are you doing? I just want to like I understand that like you don't want to take time. Like for some of these individuals, it's like, okay, because they're famous or whatever. And if they're gonna take time with me, they're gonna take time with a few other people, right? Like I get that, right? But I would never do that, no matter how famous I think I get. Would I want to? I mean, I guess we sort of do it with our New York parties and stuff like that, where to cut down on the time we interact with people, we host events where we have just tons of, high profile people come to these secret parties and they've become like known about by newspapers now and the DC parties. But I don't really consider those people friends. Like I consider them friends individually, but I don't consider it a friend to get together because what we always focus on at those parties is intellectual conversations.
Well, and connecting people with each other because they don't know each other yet. So we're
Yeah,
too
yeah, like
busy
business stuff
hosting
and
to like
everything. And
chill and hang out.
another thing that I thought was really interesting when we were going through these separately is you were like, I talk to people in group chats, but I never talk to anyone about something without utility. It is always, and when I say I'm speaking on behalf of Simone, you're like, it's always about how to make money, how to get a book done, how to
Yeah,
get
like tactical, like how are you addressing this, or can you tell me about this, or how can I help you move forward with this thing? It's never just idle socializing.
Well, yeah, the only time it is idle socializing for us, and I think this is just like us being like weirdo autists, is when we send people like, hey, I see you're getting attacked a lot online right now. Like, I hope you don't let it get to you or whatever.
That's not idle socializing. That's us extending support for people that we care about.
Yeah, so it's really only either emotional support for people who we see are going through a lot or tactical questions and nothing else. And when I say nothing else, I really mean nothing else. There's like a few people who send us memes, but we don't really meme back. which is fascinating to me. Is even with my parents, I almost never talk about anything else. I'm like, here's what I'm working on now. Do you have any tactical? And when they try to go into other stuff, I'm like, ending right now. I do not care. I
Hang
don't
up
care
on
how
them
you're feeling.
sometimes.
But so they're describing like an entirely different type of social interaction than the one we have. But I was also commenting to Simone about this morning, is how lucky we are to have found each other, because if we had craved this type of social interaction, our relationship really wouldn't have worked as well. And yet, we are from, I guess, as we say, like, we're culturally or maybe genetically different from other people, and we really just are focused on trying to make the future a better place. Like, that's it. That's everything that we focus on, right? And I would be so disappointed in you if I saw you wasting time like this. But to continue here, an escort friend of mine married one of her clients. My boyfriend met another girl on a dating app. He was staying at my place for a few months, so he brought her to live with me during the period that they were going to see if they wanted to try a serious relationship. I was just vaguely around the house as they had sex, talked for hours in each other's arms, etc. We both ended up breaking up with the boyfriend and now are good friends with each other.
Aw.
Okay, so, well, okay, they made friends with each other, but that's also really interesting. I don't want like somebody having like random sex when you mentioned like her like sitting around reading a book, and you're like, you can't imagine yourself having the time to do that. Like, not just reading a book, but then somebody sits down next to you and starts having sex.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I've sat on a couch for any reason other than, one of the journalists is visiting our house and I have to, but normally I'm up and cooking or something
Yeah, we
because I
really
can't
only
bear.
socialize for journalists these days.
That's the only time the only time I actually sit in a chair for an extended period of time is for this podcast. I can't.
Yeah.
Like to not work. I can't.
And she really means it, by the way. She finds it quite distressing. It's not an exaggeration or a ploy or
Yeah,
something.
deeply unpleasant.
And it's
But I
one of the
mean, just
reasons
in
why
general, I mean, you also like kind of really struggle to not like to just hang out. It's not something we do.
Oh no, if I'm like with a group hanging out, it's not that I'm as productive as you, but I'd always rather be like chatting with AI or playing an adventure game or drinking and watching anime or anything. So I just don't have these desires, right? Or I always have some higher order desire, even if I get some in the moment pleasure. She goes on. I know a poly couple who's been married for decades with 3 kids. They haven't really done much outside dating recently because they're too distracted with the kids, but they spent time on their relationships beforehand, and I anticipate they'll likely spend more time after once the kids stop taking up much of their attention. And yeah, this is something I often see with poly individuals. If once they start having like a reasonable number of kids, just poly stops making as much sense. And I've noted that this isn't because sex isn't good. It's just that kids are generally better.
Yeah, that's sort of underrated, that I think a lot of people couldn't imagine anything that would be more enjoyable for them to spend time doing when they know how enjoyable sex is. And you only hear about negative stuff with kids. Plus, when you're around other people's kids, it's like nails on a chalkboard. It's just so unpleasant. So you couldn't imagine ever wanting to hang out
But
around
we
your
have the
kids.
best kids,
Well, I
Simone.
think, but I mean, I do think a lot of people love their kids, and they would never guess that literally spending time with your kids could be as enjoyable or more enjoyable than sex. I think most people are like, there's
And
no
this is where
way.
I think that they're wrong with this. As the kids get older, I think that they're going to want to spend more time with them
Quite
because our kids
possibly.
just get cooler as they get older.
Yeah.
And I certainly, wouldn't want to leave my kids to, cultivate another relationship unless I was just really like the person for other reasons. But, that's rare. Like I just don't build that many friendships outside of my relationship.
Mm.
And again, the funny thing about all this is in the context of I'm allowed to sleep with people outside the relationship if I want to. It's just a matter of, is it ever worth the time? And when I look at this, I see why that isn't something I have interest in aggressively pursuing.
I guess it's one of those, you can, but should you?
Yeah. At a nerd meetup, I noticed a guy use the phrase "my wife and my partner" in separate conversations, and I figured he must be poly. I casually referenced him as poly shortly afterwards, but this freaked him out. He pulled me aside and said, "No, please don't talk about this." He hadn't quote unquote come out yet and didn't want word of this getting back to his job or friends. He was afraid of what might happen, which I
I
think shows that he's
remember we had a poly friend whose husband was like that, where like they were super closeted about the fact that they were poly. But when you
Who?
look at the bias against poly couples, that does
Oh,
not
I
surprise me at
remember.
all.
Yeah.
In Dallas, remember?
They ended
Yeah,
up breaking up, right?
they did end up breaking up, but still,
Yeah.
and getting divorced. But still, he was extremely nervous about it. And I think part of that is because they were in Texas and he worked for a more conservative company. But
I don't think that that's the only reason. I think that there is a huge difference of a guy sleeping with a lot of women outside the relationship and a woman sleeping with a lot of guys outside the relationship.
yeah, like his male peers would be like, "Sweetie, you're cucked." Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I guess I can see
especially
that.
in Dallas, Texas.
Fair, fair. Okay.
Good. No matter how much you're into it, I wouldn't want to deal with it. Like, even if I was into getting cucked, I wouldn't want to deal with the social fallout of something like
Oh
that.
yeah, like that conservative guy who was just really open and transparent about it and was just completely defenestrated for it.
Oh yeah, what was his name? God, I can.
I
We did
remember
another episode on him.
Beard
He was the guy
something.
with the beard, and he was like a manosphere influencer, and he's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
it's so cool to have my wife sleep," and everyone was like, "You, my friend," and as a lot of
Which
people point
really
out,
goes to show, like, y- doing this gets you in trouble. I mean, you can call it being cocked, you can call it poly, you can call whatever, right? But like society, a lot of people don't get it. And I think a lot of that also just comes from people. A lot of people have a sexual disgust reaction to it. And it's very hard for people to parse out the difference between a sexual disgust reaction and a this is immoral sign. They just think that they're the same thing.
yeah. All right, to continue, I am hanging out with a group of friends, which includes Bob and Alice, who are married. Bob and Alice are getting ready to try to conceive a baby. They've moved into a group house with other soon to be parents for community support. We've discussed birth control methods with Alice and how her sexual behavior is going to change once she enters an active conception attempts phase.
I
At
think I know
one
of this house.
Yeah, at one point somebody mentions how big Bob's member is. I've had sex with Bob and I agree that it's big. I say that whenever Bob approaches at orgies, the other guys tell me, "Oh, you're in for it now." Most of the other women there have also had sex with Bob. Alice says something about how her husband's member is big, but she didn't realize it was that big. And then we all tease her about having high standards for member sizes. We discuss the one other person at the orgy who has an even bigger one. What's his name? Someone remembers. We agree that it's probably girthier, but not necessarily longer. What a the conversation, what a pointless conversation.
They can be funny conversations, though. I mean, that sounds, if you're stuck with a group of people
I know,
joking about dick
yes,
sizes.
yeah. I mean, I'm glad that
Although I feel kind of bad for these guys. I would feel very self conscious if people were like talking about, I don't know, like my private parts. It would feel
I would like,
uncomfortable.
while I do not like the concept of being at an orgy, right? Like, I find it actively unarousing because, for obvious evolutionary reasons, a lot of guys are going to feel that way because you do not want to see other people sleeping with people you are trying to get pregnant. But the thing that actually sort of horrifies me is I'm like, I might not just be a participant in an orgy, but I might be a participant in the orgy who doesn't have the biggest member. Like,
Oh,
that to me would be like an extra, and I didn't even think about that
oh
before.
no, a whole new fear has been.
A whole new fear has been unlocked.
I don't think you need to worry about that.
Well, you get enough crowds statistically.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess a large enough sample, especially of people who are very confident about being naked in group spaces, you're probably going to have probably a disproportionate number of men who are well endowed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the risk is relatively higher, but I would still not be too worried for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. Two of my friends are a married couple together for 15 years. Their marriage is great. They have kids, no longer small, and they decided to open up their relationship. And now the husband has a girlfriend, the wife has a boyfriend. They all sometimes hang out together. And of course, their respective boyfriend and girlfriend are people a lot of my friends have had sex with. Everybody knows this. Nobody tries to hide it. I personally am either directly or a few sex partners removed from both the new girlfriend and boyfriend. A friend of mine is a mega slut with a body count in the multiple hundreds. She has married a very successful guy, spent the marriage helping her husband get laid and have threesomes, and now is having a few young kids. I'm hanging out with a group of friends and their friends, and I overhear someone saying, well, you guys might find this weird, but I'm actually monogamous. I remember
One in
this
our comments today was pointing out, like, remember when the left revealed this idea of radical monogamy?
Yeah, that was so funny. They're like, we're doing this weird new sex thing called radical monogamy, where you only sleep with one person, but it's because you choose to only sleep with one person, not for like weird conservative reasons. This person is really on the edge of debauchery with their new monogamy idea. They're so debaucherous, they keep one partner just for their sexual
well, I mean, in this community where it's not normative, you know, and I think it can become fairly insular where people are kind of like, whoa, wait, that's interesting.
Well, and I think that people don't realize how much, you know, when you've culturally normalized to something and something culturally outside of that seems gross and weird to you, you're like, oh, how selfish to like think of partners as only about like arousal or whatever, or getting bored of them. And this is what you think if you've normalized your monogamous culture. But like genuinely, having been around this culture and knowing how they think, you know, I go up to one of them and I'm like, well, you know, my wife and I are in a monogamous relationship or something. And they're genuinely like, what a weird, so what, your wife is like your sex toy? Like she's not allowed to like do whatever she wants? Like, what are you even talking about? Like, how selfish can you be that you're not letting your wife, the person you claim to love more than anyone else in the world, do what makes her happy? You know, like I'm not saying I agree with this framing, but I'm saying you need to understand that this framing is totally normal in these people's heads.
Yeah.
It's not like a contrivance. It's not like a defense mechanism. This is normal for them. Now, we can get to the question of whether or not it works, but it is normal for them. Also, in general, lots of swapping stories at orgies with friends. Carl did the thing to me. Did he do that to you too? Oh my God. I know Dave and I aren't usually as compatible as you and Dave, but last week he did this move I never expected. My boyfriend is having a girl he's dating over. He's mentioned he's interested in move. What moves are people doing? Like, how many moves are there? Like, as somebody who slept around a lot, I did not feel like there were that many moves. There were specific scenarios I could set up and things I could do. But in terms of like moves, like these people must pick up like a whole new repertoire of like ways to be good at arousal and stuff like that in sort of their. But I wouldn't even want to, like, if I knew that I was being judged this way for sex.
That's true. Yeah. There's a whole new layer that I got away from this that, oh, and they're all openly talking about their intimate experiences with these other people. And I would feel so self-conscious about that.
I just want to have sex, people. Like, I don't want the moves. I don't want, oh, he didn't even use a move? I'd be like,
no moves.
Sorry, I didn't collect my Pokemon cards to play all the right moves.
Didn't deploy.
Activating my trap card. Anyway, my boyfriend is having a girl he's dating over. He mentioned he'd be interested in banging her casually in the open, and I say, sure. They're sitting on the couch with us, and he starts having sex with her in front of me, with her consent. With her consent? Oh.
Yeah, just to make it clear that this isn't messed up.
It looks nice, so I asked the girl if she'd like me to take a few photos of them. She says no, but about 10 minutes later, still in the middle of getting railed on the couch, she says, actually, I changed my mind. Some photos would be nice. I'm like, draw okay. And I get a lot of photos of them having kinky sex. And
That's really sweet. It's both really sweet, but this was what I was commenting about, that like I just couldn't imagine like sitting on a couch long enough for like someone else to sit down and do anything, like turn on a TV or start railing each other. Like I'm like, that is what feels weird about this scenario.
It is a different
not the
world.
fact that they were going at it, but like the fact that someone could sit on a couch long enough.
Actually, now that you mention this, that is something that really distinguishes our poly friends from our high agency married couple friends. Is all of our poly friends have like major problems getting stuff done, and they are much slower to complete tasks. And our married friends typically have like 5 major projects at once.
Well, and this is also why like reading this just reminded me so much of the French court of Louis XIV. Like, wow, this is so familiar. What? Oh, that's it. Which is also so interesting because There, even with all like the online hate that poly people receive, like, oh, I wish we, could just make a disease to eradicate them. A big underlying theme of
They
this
did.
French
It's
court
called AIDS. Sorry, continue.
is the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is basically prude Twitter, like being like, well, I'm not going to give you the sacrament because you're sleeping out of wedlock with someone.
Wait, were
Like,
they doing this in the Louis Church or the Louis?
yeah, like in the court of Louis XIV, the like cardinals and everything had like very serious problems with Louis XIV having these open female lovers. It being up, I mean, he had multiple children with several of his female lovers. One of them sort of became the de facto nanny who would like have the kids come over to her estate and she would raise them. Like this, it was a whole thing. And like keep in mind, like it wasn't just one of these things where it was a harem for him. There were lots of there was all sorts of like mixing and matching. It felt very poly. Like keep in mind, for example, that one of the lovers of Louis the XIV was Henrietta of England, Anne, and she married King Louis XIV's brother. And likely during the time when she was married to Philippe I, Duc d'Orléans, the brother of Louis XIV, well, also like Philippe I, this brother had, multiple male lovers. And then like one really well-known one, the Chevalier de Lorraine. So like there's like there's just like all the sleeping and the, man on men. And
really interesting about this is as a guy, and even as a guy who, when I slept around a lot, had a high sexual appetite, I would not have enjoyed this. They're like, oh, you wouldn't enjoy like just a world where there's attractive women and you can sleep with them whenever you want. And not if everyone else can sleep with them. Like
oh, so like the scenario, like a scenario in which you were banging one woman while another attractive woman is sitting on the couch, like it would just be ruined by the fact that you knew that those women were sleeping with other men too.
Yeah, well, and the sexual access was so easy. Like,
oh, too easy.
95% of the fun for me back when I used to sleep around was the hunt.
Mm.
The 5% was the sex. The sex was largely irrelevant.
I mean, these people work on it, don't they?
They do, and they get the risk with new relationship energy and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a huge aspect, as we'll see going on here, where there isn't a lot of work. They're going.
Oh yeah, there's
orgy
like, oh,
and
you
they're
should just sleep with so and so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, just this person. Yeah.
And I don't know if I could gain any. And again,
yeah,
this
if it's as casual as like a referral to a lawyer.
Yeah,
it is hot.
This isn't necessarily a positive thing for me exactly. It's a bit like in a video game, right? Like I like video games, right? Sometimes when you enable the cheat mode in video games, the video game just becomes immediately unfun because the challenge was the point, right? The social challenge, the convincing somebody, the all of that, the seduction. And when you turn that off, the game isn't fun anymore.
Yeah, well, whereas I don't know, like my favorite stage of Roller Coaster Tycoon, like the one video game I ever played, computer game, PC game, was like that one park with unlimited resources. I just loved that park. I just played that one over and over. So I think for some people,
you are meant to be poly.
Therefore, I am poly. No, but for some people, this works, and I think that's the nuanced conversation that isn't being had that should be had. Is that people need to recognize.
I don't know. I'm push back there, but let's keep going here, okay?
Okay.
At an event, I'm chatting with a girl when I realize that she's about to go on a date with a guy that I've been considering going on a date with. I ask her to tell me how it goes. Afterwards, she texts me how the date went and said she was sexually disappointed and anticipated I'd be disappointed too. I thanked her and did not hook up with this guy. That is the saddest thing I've ever heard. Like, I am so scared as a guy dating in this community.
Oh,
if I disappoint one girl, all of a sudden she calls all the other girls and is like, he wasn't good enough. He wasn't, and consider these girls like kinky sex a lot. So they're like, oh, he wasn't rough enough. Oh, he wasn't, didn't do enough of the hardcore stuff.
But I mean, like in contrast, women who are dating in monogamous dating markets, which aren't even monogamous, they just pretend to be, don't have trust networks, referrals, and reviews of men.
But what you're missing here, okay, as a guy who's even into the like harder core stuff, right? Even when I was sleeping around and stuff like that, I'm getting up to that maybe a third of the time because it is so much extra effort. I don't
Well,
care
and
if it
also
turns me on
it
once.
takes a lot to know, like it, either you have to do a lot of talking in advance or have a woman who's very self-aware, or it's extremely risky.
Not really. I
Really?
mean, there's idiots who get involved in it in ways that are risky, but there is no way, like from my experience, that I'm gonna hook up with a girl and I don't know what she's into to begin with.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't the
So
conversation of
you're
like
just saying it's just sheer laziness on your part. You're like, I don't want to bother.
it's
Isn't that a
laziness.
problem?
You underestimate the effort involved. The point I'm making here is if I knew that if I didn't like basically you lose access if you're in this market. It's like sex wherever you want it, but
Mhm.
you lose access to just sex, to
Mhm.
just like normal, lazy,
Oh yeah,
relaxed.
no lazy sex allowed. Well, I don't know though. Like it seems like a lot of the sex can be pretty like sex
Sorry,
on a
Simone. I
couch.
don't have to worry about being lazy with one person and then them calling up everyone else
That's
and
true.
being like, "Hey, this is the first time I tried, I just wasn't up to snuff. Not a filet mignon. I
Mhm.
demand a filet mignon, perfectly cooked every time." So next year, some of my friends have harem chats where the people they're dating all coordinate with each other. I'm running a harem chat with one of my partners, and we'll probably be planning an orgy tailored to his preferences.
Oh.
What a time sink. Harem chats? My friends found a guy she super likes. I said, "Hey, sounds great. I can't wait to meet him." She was like, "Oh, you already met him. You had sex with him at your gangbang." They ended up getting engaged. My partner runs a gangbang squad called the Werewolves, a group of vetted STI tested experienced men who, when summoned, will all descend upon a lady who would like to experience a gangbang. It's a great network that sometimes women I know call on if they need members for any particular service. That is interesting. But imagine
I mean,
that.
I
Like
think a lot of women who have that particular sexual interest would love access to a resource like that.
oh no,
Would
yeah, and I
pay
can see some
huge
guys.
amounts of money for access to a resource like
Obviously,
that.
I would never want to do that, but I can see some guys want to do that, right?
Oh, to participate in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to line up to have sex with someone. It's like
It's
I don't want to go to Disneyland anymore because I don't want to line up to go on a ride. So
it's
why would I
sex
want to line
with
up to have sex with
lines
someone?
is what we're
Sex with
talking
lines.
about here.
Gangbangs. Sex with lines.
All right, to continue.
Okay.
And some direct quotes. I was at Susan's garden party, sheepishly admitting to just having had sex with someone in the closet. Susan overheard and said, "Well, you should F my husband," and went over to get him.
Oh.
Well, at least she's trying. But I mean, the person probably did, but like, why? Oh, you just had sex with someone? You should have sex with this other person.
Well, that's for the referrals. That's where I was thinking about your comment about the chase being an important part. Like if someone was just like, oh, my
Yeah.
friend here just had sex with someone in a closet at our garden party. You should also have
And
sex
then
with her.
here,
You'd be like, this wasn't hard. This wasn't
once I
difficult.
accidentally took too much G with one partner and then passed out, and then I woke up and I was super horny and I needed to hump something, but he needed to go pee because he had been watching me breathe for an hour.
Doesn't take that long to pee.
So he called his roommate over so I could hump his roommate's leg while I waited for my partner to come back. Then he sent me home with my husband with pics and more G so my husband could enjoy. Honestly, sleeping with people who live together has been super convenient and nice. God, I just would not want that. I would not. They'd send you back and I'd be like, you can keep her. Yeah, I'm not interested anymore.
Wow, good to know. I'd really better
The
not
fact that most of my
slip
friends
up.
are my ex-partners or ex-metamors, I had to draw a diagram where I explained this all to my newest partner. I didn't seem to use dating apps anymore because meeting people at sex parties has become more efficient. And this is something I actually really get. Back when I slept around a lot, it actually took me a really long time after I started dating Simone and stopped dating around much to make friends. And I would still hang out on dating apps predominantly to make friends because it was the primary way I knew to
I
meet people.
remember that. Yeah.
And I just really struggled.
How do I do this? But I mean, I experienced the same thing when I was dating. I was just stunned by how like I used it more to find friends and I made some really great friends out of it. And I didn't realize that dating apps would be so good for that.
Well, I mean, there was even like a stage early in our relationship where we basically pretended to be polyamorous just to meet
Just to
people,
have friends. I know, it was
in
so
like San
bad.
Francisco. But the
Nothing
thing
sexy ever happened. Like, we just made a lot of
is
friends.
I have an easier time convincing a woman to go on a date with me than I had convincing a woman to just hang out with me. Um,
That is true. I never thought about that before.
I'm like, "Hey, do you wanna come for this?" This brings them to the yard. If I'm like, "Hey, do you wanna come to just chat?" They're like, "Eh, well, no,
Do you
not
think
really."
that's women think that you'll pay if it's a date?
No, because they
So
often insisted on splitting and stuff like that. It's I think it's a contextualization of what they wanna spend their time on
or maybe
thing.
they feel more desired. Yeah. Like, if it's
Maybe.
just a friend thing, it almost it's an insult because I think maybe some women instinctually feel like men can't have woman friends,
I
and if
don't think
they're
that that's it at all. I think it's
no?
that they're either going to just talk with somebody or they are going and they know what the guy's interested in their mind, which is sex. So they feel like they know what's up. They know what the whole thing is.
Mm.
And they can get multiple things out of the interaction, not just a conversation, but possibly sex, which to them is important.
And or limerence, new relationship
Yeah.
energy, that thrill.
Me
I
and a
remember that,
partner's
that was
boyfriend
fun.
Me and a partner's boyfriend used to send each other cute photos of her when she's with the other, and we coordinate on how to cheer her up and surprise her with something.
That's really sweet.
It's sweet, but not something I would ever want. This is the other thing, like,
What,
all
does
of
it sound like
these
too much work for
are
you?
very aspirational from a perspective of somebody like her and
Mm.
horrifying from the perspective of somebody like me.
Why
For
horrifying? Why is that horrifying?
the idea of me getting pics of somebody else sleeping with somebody I'm sleeping with as, like, a fun little thing, I would not find
Oh.
that fun
Oh, right,
at
that the
all.
part of partner sharing would disgust you. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was overly focused on the whole, like, cheering her up thing.
Once I was sad after not getting banged enough at an orgy, my two boyfriends trying to cheer me up coordinated to have sex with me at the same time, even though they're not really in to MMF threesomes. Which again sounds sweet within the context of the community. To
But
me,
here
I'm
you
like,
are thinking, like,
"Ugh."
I would feel obligated to do that, and I would feel very uncomfortable. That's your kind of
This
reaction.
is like people hugging me who I'm like not interested in hugging me. I'm like, it's not that I hate hugs. I just want to hug my kids and wife. Being with one partner and texting pics/video of us having sex to another partner who is brimming with delight. I mean, they have the thing here. Is that hot off the presses? Yes, especially for you. You're such a good girl. Don't let me get between you and sucking that C. See you tomorrow, beautiful. Thank you, sir. I'm so lucky. And then more video. I have a pic open while doing the task. Holy S. F, there's something so special about seeing it right after it's recorded. These people must just have entirely sexual profiles in me.
Yeah, no, what I do think it's kind of a popular thing for people to like enjoy this. Like public sex is a big arousal pathway for many people.
But this is watching
And I
somebody
think
you're interested
voyeurism,
in sleeping with somebody else.
public
Like,
sex and voyeurism is big. And it may for many people be bigger than the instinct against sharing partners.
and then to continue, one thing I think is cute is people sharing tips on how to have sex with other shared partners.
Hmm.
Like, I believe there exists a how to have sex with me document that I didn't write because it was co created by a few people I sleep with. Wait,
No,
she
this
has
makes
one of those,
sense. This makes
I
sense
think.
because
I started seeing someone in June that I really quite like, and I discovered he hadn't been particularly slutty, but had slutty aspirations. And I immediately started to think, how/when do I start promoting him to my hot friends?
oh,
That's really, and this happened to me when I was younger as well. Women really will share you among your friends if you're like a good at S person and you are into the stuff that women are into that most guys aren't into, which again, as I've said, is the much more like dominance focused, harder core stuff. On the chat, people were like, "Oh, what sort of person likes being choked?" And I was like, "Well, one, the statistics show that actually more women prefer that than don't prefer that. But in addition to that, just as somebody who slept around a lot, I have seen that 100% in women." I mentioned one of the cases that I still remember very vividly is a girl. This is in high school. She comes to me and she goes, "Look." my boyfriend is being a big pussy. He was choking me and I passed out and now he's all freaked out. And I've heard you're like way hardcore and cool. So will you like have real sex with me? Because I can't find like a good guys with, and I'm here like, okay, like even if that's hot, like I know about sticking it in crazy, right? Like, and this is clearly a red flag warning right here. You know, he was a little worried about endangering my life, and I know that you're not the type of guy who worries about that. And I'm like, you know, you're probably right, but that should be a wake up call for me. But what I mean is this is actually what happens. Like this is coming from the women, not from the men.
Yeah.
The number of guys I know, and this is actually in the Discord thread as well, where they're like, look, I actively as a guy find this a turn off. I've had to do this with multiple women just to get them to not break up with me choking.
Well, I
Like,
bet you're glad I'm not into that. That would be stressful.
you haven't been into it. Like it's one of those like, oh, you have to do it every time and then it becomes a risk.
I'm into broad dominance, but I don't need choking.
Yeah,
I think some people
but
are very specifically into like that lightheaded feeling you get.
no, and this is what people get wrong. People who aren't into this, they'll come into it and say, "Oh, they're into like auto asphyxiation and the lightheaded feeling and blah blah blah." And I'm like, you have not been with many people who are into this. What they are into is knowing their partner could kill them. That's what the point of it is.
I don't
It
know.
is,
I think that's sometimes it. I think there's a bunch of things
it
going
is
on.
the vast majority of the time Simone. I know you haven't slept with a lot of people who are into this. You don't understand the context of the way that they want this.
Oh.
It is not to be choked out. Okay. If it is to be choked out, it is only insofar as knowing that the partner might actually attempt to kill them.
Oh, wow.
That is why they like getting to that stage. It is not the lightheadedness. They want to feel like they are with somebody who is that level of aggressive,
Okay, no.
that
So I'll
level
push
of dominant.
back because a lot of people, like a lot of the auto asphyxiation deaths that take place, are people doing
Men
this
who do it alone,
themselves.
not women.
I
Not
don't know.
women,
I'll
not
need to look
women.
that up.
Actually look at the statistics. You
Okay.
can look at the statistics while we're talking here, but auto asphyxiation deaths are almost exclusively male. And this is a very different phenomenon than women liking to be choked.
Okay. I'm looking it up.
A couple of years later at an orgy, we decided to so this one is crazy. I thought I met my crush Aella at an orgy in France. Years later, I invited her to my wedding dinner, and at the dinner, my girlfriend announced, "Hey Aella, did you know Fred has a crush on you?" She was like, "No, is this true?" I admitted it was. A couple years later at an orgy, we decided to start writing together. When I wrote the opening of what would become our first co-authored novel in a fountain pen on her back, remember you didn't realize it was on her back, we've now published 5 novels together. With a 6th coming out in 2 months and 2 more due next year. I wonder if anyone reads these.
Yeah, that's what I'm very curious about. Like, are these successful novels or are they just like,
Okay, so
Google
what'd
Docs?
you find with AI? Am I right?
You were more right than I ever could have imagined. Male to female ratio of over 50-1 has been reported in some analyses, meaning males account for approximately 98 to 99% of cases, while females make up only 1 to 2%.
Women do not like being choked for the lightheaded reason. It is for the same reason they want a vampire to bite their neck in a vampire book. It is for the same reason they want to date a werewolf in a werewolf book. It is because they want to know that the person they are with
They could kill them, but they don't.
No, could and might kill them.
Oh,
you
gosh.
are thinking about Twilight here and not Anne Rice, which is the OG vampire writer. And you're forgetting that in Twilight, while Edward didn't want to potentially kill her, the other hot vampire who was into her did.
There was another hot vampire that was into her?
Yeah, he's from one
I
of them.
thought Edward didn't, like, he was like, no, stay away from me because he wanted to kill her. And that was the hot
Well,
part.
and again, this is part of the thing.
Yeah.
Women
She was
like this.
yummy.
That we like to pretend that they don't, but like you watch the books that they're reading, you look at what they're asking guys to do, even guys who are like clearly uncomfortable about this. And that's why for this girl who reached out to me, when I was younger, and she was like, oh, when I passed out, my boyfriend got worried. That's why that ruined the entire fantasy for her. That's why she never wanted to sleep with her boyfriend again after that.
Oh, because yeah, she knew that he would never actually.
Yes.
And the plausible deniability was what was hot for her.
Exactly.
Oh, dear me. Okay. All right.
Simone, female psychology here. You are missing the girls who are into this and trying to even you who is into, fairly, more extreme things than I think other people have this fantasy that people aren't as debauched as they are. And they are debauched. Okay, for years, I maintained a signal group called Redacted, where and for people who are wondering, oh, why would women be into this? Again, we've pointed out, like, this is very obvious evolutionary reasons. If you look at the amount that towns were rated historically, women, especially women who are already having a lot of sex, and you can look at our thesis of where I think that women who don't have many sexual partners tend more towards tender sexuality, or at least not the extremes of BDS sexuality, or like, the more extreme forms of dominance and submission and violence. I think a lot of this is due to polyamory signaling to a woman that she is in an environment where she is being passed around or an S slave, which is what it would have meant in a historic context. And a lot of women were in that scenario in a historic context. It wasn't like a rare thing.
Meaning that it would be evolutionarily adaptive to be more into that.
Yes, in many evolutionary environments throughout human history, the majority of women having kids were essentially slaves. So the idea that you wouldn't have some adaptability by knowing not to fight back in aggressive situations, and aggressive situations are when you don't want to fight back the most because that's when they're most likely to kill you. So that is why in those situations specifically, you would want some sort of counter signal. Again, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just explaining why humans are built.
It's a survival thing. Yeah.
Weird way. For years, I maintained a signal group called Redacted, where people I was sleeping with would talk about topics related to dating me and occasionally AI safety.
Okay.
Let's just talk about X and AI safety. And then I have a shared Google Photos album where my metamor and I share saucy pics of our mutual partner. It's called Butts. Obviously, everything.
I think that's cute.
She goes on to say, obviously, everything is not perfect. We're human, and sometimes there's conflicts. A friend of mine's metamors, a partner's partner, two girlfriends and boyfriend are metamors with each other, recently got uncomfortable with my friend's relationship, and it caused painful issues. I've had partners break up with me because they found someone else and wanted to be monogamous with them, and they picked her over me. One couple I know opened their relationship, and there was some rocky months where one of them found a partner faster than the other. Jealousy and insecurity are real, but they don't usually manifest in the way you'd think. Almost none of the list of anecdotes about jealousy, as far as I know, usually it pops up in different ways. Like my partner just recently let me know he'd be spending time with other girls during a time I'd be visiting him on a trip. I haven't gotten to spend much time with him as recently as I wanted, and the sense of scarcity sparked jealousy in me. That's a real jerk thing. If she's flying out to see this person, why is he sleeping with other individuals?
Yeah.
I expressed this by sending him a lot of Soviet-era propaganda posters that I customized with relevant text, with like me and her, and the guy is stabbing the other girl. And it's like
such a cute wave of reacting.
Of being like, you're being a jerk. But he is being a jerk. This isn't like a polyamory thing. This person's being a jerk. She's like, I don't actually hate the other girl stealing him away. I was trying to convince my partner to not see them, but I'd learned that suppressing jealousy when I feel it in order to seem cool is a terrible, unsustainable, no good move.
And this is a really important point. Of one of the reasons why herd community works so well is they are extremely emotionally self-aware. They're very transparent. And if you're not able or willing to buy into that, then you shouldn't play the game.
Right. But the type of people, like when I read this list and we go through all of this, and the reason I went through all of this is the type of guy who thinks, I'd really love to be able to regularly sleep with people who are not my partner.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think a lot of guys fit that category. The type of girl who may occasionally think that, I don't think a lot of girls do, but I think a good 20% do. The number of guys or girls who, after hearing this list of anecdotes as what successful polyamory looks like, and who are like, oh, wow, that sounds like a good life. I think that's 1.5%.
Yeah, I guess because the unsaid part is that most men would love to sleep with additional women, but women who are only sleeping with them. That's the
Yes.
key problem, right? And then the additional ancillary problems are like the sharing, the transparency, the social pressure, the risk of being expunged from the community if you're not seen as being a sufficiently generous lover, etc. Correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I find this really interesting. I find the amount of time spent on all this very interesting.
Mm.
As you pointed out, this is a community that is just lower productivity than other communities we know, despite being same intellectual horsepower. It's also, I've noticed poly groups are way more susceptible to viral memes than non-poly groups.
What do you mean, like AI doomerism?
Like AI doomerism. Poly
Well, and that
groups
makes
are
sense because
incredibly susceptible.
it becomes this social echo chamber where suddenly if everyone within the community believes it, then it's very hard to avoid. Like
And you don't
even you
have
are
that.
susceptible to, like, if like everyone around you is saying one thing, it gets to you. And if you lived in that community and you were also intimate with people in that community, it would be really hard to not
Well, and you
get
don't
pulled
have
in.
that sanity partner, right? Like the
Yeah,
thing
there's no
about
sanity check.
you
Yeah.
or our other friends who are in like monogamous marriages is AI doomerism goes around. They go to a party where they hear people worried about it. They think about it and they're like, this seems really stupid. And then they turn to their partner and they go, is this really stupid? Like, here are my thoughts. And their partner, without worry about what other people in the community are going to say about them, is able to give an honest judgment. Aella doesn't have anyone she can go to with that, for
Hmm.
example. The other people in these polycules don't have anyone they can go to and be like, is Vector a cult? Is AI doomerism stupid? Is shrimp welfare idiotic? Is negative utilitarianism like a poorly thought through idea? They don't. Because if these things have become status symbols within the community, they put themselves at risk by pointing out how dumb they are. And I can say, for example, if I was part of this wider polycule network that Ayla is a part of, and I, took a stance of, intellectual integrity and said AI doomerism is just a poorly thought through position, I would lose sexual access. I'd lose a lot of sexual access. Even if I
Hmm.
tried to do it in private, even if I tried to be like, because people would notice, oh, his metamors seem, not as seem immune to the mimetic virus. Well, we need to worry about this. This is a really bad thing. So yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be more socially agreeable, and that could get you, yeah, a little bit echo chambered. Didn't think about that part.
Yeah, so there's downsides that I think she's also not seeing. But to me, the biggest downside is just the number of people who think this is going to be appealing to them because, oh, there's a hot person who wants to sleep with me, and they say all I have to do is be polyamorous to enter this. And I'm talking men here. Women get involved for different reasons. They think, oh, this is what you do, this is normal, versus the people who want this in state is very small. Very, very few people want this in state.
Well, so I actually think that there's going to be growing relevance for these types of communities in a post-scarcity age. Like, let's say UBI becomes pervasive, especially to the extent that people are very comfortable and they just really don't need to work and they're not working. I could see this becoming super common because you need to fill that void with something, and you can fill it with the drama and the new relationship energy and the negotiating new relationships and the I'm bored, let me try out a new kink. Like, I think for a leisured class, whether it's the court of Louis XIV or whether it's post-scarcity AI communities, this could fill a really big void. Will these people inherit the future? No, because I don't think they're going to be creating sustainable families that have descendants and that then
Yeah.
therefore inherit the future. So I think it's going to be a very short-lived kind of format. Though you see it in Star Trek. I mean, like, there's a lot of sleeping around in
Well,
Star
I
Trek.
think a lot of kids who grow up as you did, you sort of grew up in a
In this
network
kind of
where
world.
polyamory was normal
Yeah.
among, like, that's how your parents met. They didn't call it polyamory back then, as you always point out. But
No, as my dad always points out, what does he call it? Free love? It was free
the
love.
point being is that you didn't want that for yourself. Even when you
Yeah,
started,
but
like,
I didn't
dating.
want any sex for myself.
Right, but I have seen very, very few people who have grown up in communities where polyamory was normalized that want polyamory in their own lives. Polyamory is something I see almost exclusively and disproportionately in communities where they felt like extreme monogamy was enforced.
So
Consider
you think it's
Aella
more
growing
reactionary
up
than
in an
anything?
extremist Christian environment, and a
Where
lot
she
of the
was
other
raised
polyamorous
that like
people I
her
know.
job would be a housewife raising kids at home, never having a job.
Yeah, are descendants of, like, Orthodox Jewish families. They're typically first generation breakaways. It is not multi-generation exposure to this
That's
stuff.
true. Do we know any second generation poly people?
One.
Who? Well, you don't have to.
No, we wouldn't call him out. Remember that guy who grew up in a cult
No, because his father was polygamous.
and then kicked all the young boys out of the cult?
Yeah, so that's not polyamorous. That
Yeah.
is not, because he was actually sharing women with other men. So no, that doesn't count. That doesn't
Yeah,
count.
okay. I've never seen it once. And this to me says something about the intergenerational durability of this.
In fact, he was actually, we will say he was reactionary to a very rigid sexual dynamic he grew up with.
Yeah.
So no, that's still, come on,
Which
Simone,
is to
take a
say
stand.
that this is fascinating to me that I can't think of one. And it's been around for a while now. It's been around since the 70s. It's been around so much that you
Yeah,
grew up
since like,
around it.
yeah, my parents came out of one, and yet, no, like, I mean, none
And
of
as
their
we say, the
kids.
first 18 years of a kid's life is a sales pitch to replicate the culture that they grew up as.
Yeah.
And this is just not a replicable culture.
Despite the fact that I never thought anything negatively about it.
Yeah, no. This is how polyamory works. Polyamory only works if you think the idea that you can sleep with multiple people is novel and worth, like, it's worth exploring for its novelty. If you are given this idea without stigma attached to it, and you're like, okay, here are two lifestyles. You can sleep around a ton, or you can be monogamous. Which lifestyle do you prefer given the ups and downs of both? Most humans choose the monogamous lifestyle.
Well, I feel like if I was living in a post-scarcity society where I had never met someone like you and I did enjoy physical contact, this would be very entertaining. Like the
Not really,
drama, the not
because
knowing.
I know you as well as I know myself,
Yeah.
and while, this might be something where, like, if we have somebody who we're really close to or whatever, there could be exceptions to something like this. The vast majority of the time, I would always prefer to use AI. Like, the vast, vast majority of the time.
Yeah, because then also you're not going to hurt a real person if
And
somehow things go
it's like
wrong.
as they say in the lower deck Star Trek, where I can't remember, it's whatever. It's like, that's the holodeck. That's only meant for training exercises and weird sex stuff for the commanders. Like, and it's like, that's what the point of the holodeck is weird sex stuff. But the point being is that as AI gets better at simulating things, I think polyamory is going to appear more and more weird and like a pointless waste of time.
No, but I
Because
think the people who get involved in this community too, I think, are uniquely physically responsive, which you and I again aren't. Like, people touch us and we're like, how can
I
I get this scenario
agree,
to
but
end?
AI will be able to masturbate those instincts in the future. Come on, Simone, we're talking about the next generation.
Haptic suits, bring it
Haptic
on.
suits.
I don't
Yeah.
want to wear. I don't want to wear haptic. I don't want anything. Like, if I could untouch, unfeel.
I'm just saying, if that's what they want, there
Yeah.
will be better alternatives than having to date stinky humans.
I don't know. I think for a lot of them, it's also the smell. But sure, you can.
AI will be able to simulate
I know.
smells.
Fine. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see.
In a
We'll
world
see.
where they can get all of this from an automated environment, and I think that's a really interesting question for the next generation of polyamory, does
Mhm.
polyamory make sense at all?
Well, I mean, I feel like a lot of this and what is being discussed in this too is she's not talking specifically about instances of like this particular time when we had sex, it was so amazing. What she's actually talking about is all
the
the
culture.
ancillaries. It's the culture, it's the group chat, it's the shared experiences with a partner, and getting to gossip about that partner, and getting to share new people with that partner, and getting to recommend people to that partner. And I think that's almost like, when I'm taking away what I'm seeing is the feature of all this, a lot of it's that feeling of meaning and community and connection. And again, that's one of the things that's really
It's just
lacking from
an
modern
extrovert
society.
thing. Like this is like I guess yeah, because you and I have such a lack of a desire for that, and I don't mean a lack of a desire. I have an aversion to that stuff.
Yeah, it's the lack of desire is not a
That's not
sufficient.
the right word. I
Yeah.
find this stuff really horrifying. I know I'm always horrified by my friends who have like drama and stuff like that. I try so hard to stay out of drama, and
Have
our
we
friends.
ever, our drama's only ever been like logistical, like, so and so died. Were they murdered?
Yeah, but we also don't really share our drama with others either.
No.
And I really struggle with some of our friend network who has more drama, and most of them are polyamorous. Because it's not like I struggle with dealing with it. I struggle with worrying about their sadness and
Oh,
emotional
yeah.
stress.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, this is unfair to
I don't
you.
like seeing you hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish you could just be with a trad partner, who.
But I think it's unfair too, because trad partners have a lot of trauma. Just go to dead bedrooms on Reddit. Like, a lot of people struggle with their relationships. They're unhappy. They are unfulfilled. Like, to dunk on the downsides for people who are polyamorous is totally unfair. We would argue that most people are in super suboptimal relationships where they like barely talk to each other. They have separate lives. They
I
don't
don't
spend a
think
lot
that's
of quality
true of
time
our
together.
generation. I think our generation is actually fairly good. Like, of our friend network, most everyone I know who's married is in a really healthy relationship. I think that this is a boomer thing. It's a boomer and urban monoculture thing.
I guess,
But
yeah.
anyway, great chatting with you about this. This episode's gone way too long.
Sorry. Gossip, right? But Aella's amazing. I think Aella's lifestyle is perfect for her. And I think this lifestyle, for all the people that she's mentioned, that at least I think I know, like, it's perfect for them too. They do it well, they wear it well. And so, like, let them
I
be.
think in many instances they'd be better off going to live on a farm. And
I don't know. I mean, I would love for some of them, because they're such brilliant minds, to be more productive. That's my one gripe, is that I wish they produced more work and had more of an impact on the world and had a farther reach, because they are
a
really
lot of these
brilliant.
people have a very far reach, Simone.
I guess you'd like some of the AI doomers to have less of a far reach, so you should just be
Yeah,
encouraging
I'm
them to
glad
be
that all
more
the AI
poly.
doomers are stuck in these.
Have more
I
sex, you guys.
I
They do that.
think it's part of why AI doomers never get anything done.
They're too busy in their poly relationships.
Yeah, we did a application for funding from a EA grant, and we were like, we actually need to work on the AI safety stuff because the AI doomers get effing nothing done. And it's not that there's no threat from AI; it's just that these people are stuck at orgies 24/7.
No, you didn't say that on the application.
Well, that's what I secretly believe.
You as good as said that, I guess.
Yeah, maybe if you actually thought AIs were going to kill us, you wouldn't spend a third of your time dealing with orgy logistics planning. Anyway, love you to death, Simone. Have a good day.
Good day, sir.
Do you want to do another one, or do you want to go down and do dinner?
Gosh, it's 4:03 already. Some people in the comments, Malcolm, pointed out that the book I'm reading now, All Systems Read by Martha Wells, looks like it has an Apple TV show coming out called Murderbot. So I'm excited. Well, I guess we don't have Apple TV, so never mind. I'm not excited. But that's fun.
So that show that you liked, it's got
no, the book I'm enjoying looks like there's going to be
about
or
the
already
robot
is
murderer?
a TV series called Murderbot.
Very on the money.
Who doesn't love
naming? I mean, a lot of people are gonna want to see a murder bot, and they're gonna see what is it, like a sweet show about a robot that like.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be adorable like in the book. I don't know if he's going to be socially awkward and autistic. So I guess we'll see. But I'm excited for it.
I am excited to get a chance to talk to you. It's the perfect time of day, the time of day that everybody waits for.
I love our conversations so freaking much. They're just the best. They're my happy time, even if we don't run them. But now we can just run the stuff that's too spicy on Patreon, so we don't have to worry so
We'll
much.
see.
I'm
Well, I
glad.
mean, the channel's been doing really well. The episode today was 7 out of 10, but it was still above the normative range of views.
That's awesome.
So even one that's doing lower in our recent episodes is doing unusually well. I mean, I think it's because we've done a number of good Beatty episodes in a row, to be honest. I don't know if it's anything other than that, but
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Just sorry, one moment while I get Indy in a position where I think she's more likely to fall asleep because it is her nap time. She just
go.
I'm sorry. Girl. Okay, all right. Okay. Ha. I think I've been looking forward to discussing this all day. Like as soon as I saw the email in my inbox, I was excited about it. So let's go.
Okay. Oh, things to talk about, by the way, just so we remember, and we'll do this with the next episode. I want to talk to you about the categories we're thinking of using for the game system.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, it's beautiful on the inside? Okay, so it says, Happy Father's Day. And it's beautiful here, too?
Yeah.
It says, dictated, I just want to give you a big hug. I made this drawing for you. Love, Torsten. You want a big hug?
Yeah.
Aw, what a Father's Day hug.
You're good.
Now here's Titan.
Okay, let's do Titans. Hey, no. Torsten, come on.
Hey, there's some more.
Come on, there is more. We've got one for Indy and one for Mommy.